Welcome everybody to our actually fourth series of free bird drawing classes with John Muir Laws. If you've missed any of the previous series, we will be distributing links that have all of the previous recorded classes, as well as links to Jack's website where he has way more classes available as well. So I'm Hamar. I'm calling in from the Richardson Bay Audubon Center in Tiburon, California. And I'm really glad to be working with Jack to bring you these classes for free again. You know, it kind of started as a pandemic project where we weren't able to do these bird drawing classes in person at the center anymore, but now we're able to bring this kind of environmental education to a much larger audience. And I think the members of our audience have found it enjoyable. So it's great to keep bringing it to you. Just to let everybody know, I'm going to be disabling the chat in just a minute so that we don't have distractions as the class goes on, but we will still be able to see your comments in the chat in case you have any questions. And if we have any time left over, we will do a Q&A at the end. With that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jack and we can get started.
Hey, Mar, thank you and thank Audubon so much. I'm really delighted here to be with owl lovers all around the world. And I want to today to show you how some strategies for looking at owls and blocking in the basic shapes so that your owls look more owly. And let's see, Hamar, if you would spotlight me, so I want to show you when an owl pops up in front of me, and I'm out there in the field. I want to get these notes down in my journal. There are some strategies that make a really big difference that help me be able to transfer what's coming in my eyes and getting it down on paper. So if you've ever had the problem of you're looking at the bird, and you look down at your page and your brain just goes blank, you're not alone. So one way of initially engaging with that is that when the owl is in front of you, what you're going to do is first, you're going to pat the owl. Yes, you're going to pat the owl. And this is fun because they are oh so soft. So what I mean by pat the owl is that when you're looking at the owl, let's say you've got the spotting scope here, you've got your other hand in the air and you imagine that you're just kind of going over the contours of its head and down its back. And you're kinesthetically kind of getting a sense for those angles. And another thing that you can do is to start to say out loud all the little details. So if you notice this about like, there's darker broad streaks over the top of the chest, and then there's little more parallel bars down below. Whatever you notice, say it out loud. And it turns out that the out loud makes a big difference on this. Your brain will remember all the details that you say out loud. If you are looking at something and you just are thinking, I'm going to remember that, your brain, when you get the next little thing that you're going to remember, when that pops up into your brain, what your brain does is it takes the one that was there before and throws it away. But if you had said it out loud, that's enough to kind of keep that idea in your short-term memory long enough for you to do something really functional with, like get it down on a piece of paper. And about getting things down on the piece of paper, don't worry about having to make a work of art. Don't worry about having to make it look pretty. These initially are field notes, and these field notes are going to help us pay attention and document what we see. And being a pretty picture doesn't have to do that. So very often we get really stressed out if like, this isn't a pretty picture. Think of this initially when you're out in the field making field notes. Think of this as I'm taking field notes. So you're doing this to help you observe better and to document or record, help you remember later on. If you keep that goal in mind, it helps you do a lot more pictures. And then if you do a lot more pictures, what happens is your owl drawings start to get better and better and better and better and better. One last suggestion is that as you are sketching, your owl's going to be doing this like owls, because they'll orient towards you. The minute you start drawing it, it's going to do this. Right? And if you wait for it to come back into that same position, somehow they can tell and they don't. So what you do is right there on the same page, what you want to do is just start another sketch of the owl in this new position. So you don't have to draw a whole new body, you can just draw a whole new head. So very often I'll have one body with multiple head positions. And then as the owl does this, I'll start that one over here. As it does this, I'll go back onto my central one. It does this, I'll start another little drawing over here. And so there can be these different owl heads, or if you can even make them old looking in this towards the center if you want to, right? That's going to really help you be able to handle that sort of moving head thing. But my brain, if I'm looking at this position and I'm trying to draw this, my brain just gets all scrambled. So to unscramble your brain, get several of these different drawings going. In this class, what I want to do is to show you how to kind of create this structure, this wireframe, understand kind of the kind of key parts of this owl, and especially the owl face, because owls have these really, really, really cool faces, and be able to kind of get that on your page. We're also going to look at how do you handle these different kind of looking around angles, and it's going to be fun. So the way I'm going to go about this is I'm going to have on one side of my screen some slides where you can see pictures of owls, and on the other, you're going to be able to see me drawing and sketching. And at the same time, I'm going to be narrating and discussing the steps that I do. Again, don't worry about having to make pretty pictures. If you want pretty pictures, the secret is to make lots of pictures, because then you just train your brain to like, oh, like, and also, by the way, the first drawings we're going to make today are going to be the goofiest of the entire day. So at the start, don't think of it as drawings. Think of these, I'm going to make a diagram of that, right? There's much less art pressure on the idea of diagrams. It's fun. Let's give it a try. Here we go. Hey, Mar, can you just check in with me? Are you seeing on one side of your screen something that says owls and my hand on the other side of the page?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so here we go. So we are going to get a close look at a closer look at owls here. And I'm going to be demonstrating how I think about and draw what I see on the page on the side. If I get under the hood of an owl and look at its skeleton, there's a large head that supports even just ridiculously large eyes. If you were an owl, your eyes would be about the size of somewhere between an orange and a grapefruit. And so that would take up most of your head, would be eyes. They've got such big eyes. If you take a look in through the ear flap of an owl, you can actually see the back of its eye. So it's just huge head and eyes. All right. So we have a kind of a big blocky head. And there is a flexible S-shaped neck that attaches to the back of that. And their body is a surprisingly small box that hangs down from that. And from there, they've got a shoulder that goes to, so I'll show you on the photograph here, a shoulder to an elbow to a wrist. This is the hand. That's what it's going to attach the wing. But notice how much leg there is. So there's from the hip, there is a short thigh bone. Then the drumstick bone here is really long. And then its little bird foot attaches to that. So birds, these owls, they've got short, then they have their legs are surprisingly long. And you're thinking, wait, no, this doesn't make any sense to me. How can an owl have long legs? 2 toes forward, 2 toes back here. We'll see how they manage that in just a second. So if we take put skin on, you still have this very sort of strange looking dinosaur thing. But look at how just it looks like a hungry chicken, right? But long legs. Here is they also can have kind of give you this sort of look of these kind of to me look like what people say space aliens are supposed to look like. These are some chicks of barn owls. There's something just delightfully creepy about this. But just look at how long those legs are. So you're looking at an owl, and just I want you to see if you can visualize what the legs are doing inside. So we're going to have inside this, there's going to be a skull that's about this big, about kind of from the edge of the eye to the edge of the eye. The rest is fluff. And then the body is going to be a little nugget like this down inside here. And then the rest is legs. Crazy. But the feathers hang down and cover all that business up. From this point on, the pictures, the photographs that I'm going to be showing you are from the websites birdpixel.com. That should be all in one row, birdpixel.com and seeingbirds.com. These photographers have given permission to use, not just for me in this presentation, but for you in your training and practice. You can use their extensive libraries of owl photographs and other bird photographs to practice and learn from. And so deep respect to those bird photographers for also sharing this with us. All right. So here's how I go about thinking of this. What I usually do, the owl's sitting there, is I start by just looking at the shape of the air right here behind the back of the bird, right? So we're going to pat the bird here. Actually, we're going to pat the front of its face, right? And then over its back. Notice how your hand comes down. Everybody, I'm here in my studio by myself. I'm patting this bird in the air. I'm going to suggest that you do the same. And just sort of notice how when your hand gets to those different contours, right, your hand is going a different direction. That is helping your brain kind of note that. So the way that I then do, I'll then pick up my pencil and I will kind of pat the bird with my pencil. So there's that same line, right? So it's coming down here, going over, and then it's coming down on the back. So that's my first line on my bird, is that sort of line of the back. And then I put in just a little spacer ball where its head is going to go. And the smaller the owl, the larger its head is going to be proportionate to the rest of the body. So think of for like a little saw-whet owl or a boreal owl, you're going to be having these huge heads, right? Really big heads. As you get into the larger owls, you're going to get proportionally smaller and smaller heads. So I'm going to give a head in here, and then let's pat the backside. The backside is also this curve, right? So I am pat the bird here, get this, what artists call the negative shape, a spacer for the head, and then the chest of the bird. These three elements are my starting lines on any bird, including owls. And so we're going to be looking at just sort of how we're going to make some of those same lines on different birds. So let's start on the right side of this. So your hand's going to come down, kind of go over that point of the shoulder, and then down on the bird. So feel that each one of those changes in direction. So down here, out to here, and then down here. Those are changes in direction. Those are changes in the direction where your pencil is going to go. So you're going to come down, you're going to go out over, and then we're going to come back down. Now this is a ridiculously large head, even though it's a large bird for me. So I'm going to give it a pretty good sized head, and then down that other side of it. So negative shape, line at the back. Head spacer. And then the shape on the other side. So those are my first critical 3 lines. From there, I'm going to put in a rough oval where my body goes, and I can put other elements here. I'm putting in just a little rectangle bopping down for my tail. It's helpful to notice where on this whole structure the branch that it is sitting on, because we tend to put those branches always too low. This one is actually up in here somewhere. If I can get this, I've got the basic proportions of this bird. Wow, look at that. This bird has such a large head. Even though I was trying to make a big head, I made its head too small. Look at the size of the head of this one. And then look over there at that thing. So if maybe you're like this, yeah, right? And now we're a little bit more great gray owl. Yeah, that's better. I mean, that head is so big, such a big old head. If I wanted to, it doesn't matter how, if I put a whole bunch of great gray owl details on this, but that head wasn't big enough, it wouldn't feel like the great gray owl. So at the start of a drawing, it's easy for me to change things like these proportions because I don't have any detail invested in. If I drew this little intricate bird face and then it was too small, I'd be sad. But because this is just at the start of a drawing, this is going to be easy for me to do. Okay, now look at this big old head, right? Big head because it's a small owl. This is a little boreal owl. It's a cute little owl. And notice how big that head is, right? Let's pat that bird, bumpy back, head bump, bump, and straight down there, right? So if I were to pet this bird, I would have a bump, the straight. And let's see if I can put in a ball that is going to be, can I put in a head that's going to be big enough? There's the mass of my bird. We're going to get into some of the other sort of details, especially what's going on here on the head in a moment. Where does that branch come in? Right, that branch comes in here. That's a big, big head. Look at that negative shape right there. Ridiculously large head. Right? Flat down here, and there's this angle. Look at this blue area right here. See the shape of the blue? Notice that it is easier to see this angle when I look at the blue, not the owl. When I look at the owl, I'm so distracted by its lovely owliness that I get distracted by all this awesome owlness. But when I'm just looking at the shape of the blue here, it's easier for me to see that angle. So I'm looking at the blue and I'm getting in that angle. Where's that branch come in? That branch comes in. I always put my branches too low. Somewhere in there. Oh, higher. Somewhere in there. So another line that is going to be useful in this is if I can see this leading edge of the wing. See how where the wing is kind of cutting down in here? So that's going to be a useful line for me to kind of get into this initial sketch. So I want to do is notice where it starts and where it ends. So it's going to end somewhere down here near the tail. It's going to start about halfway up the side here. So about halfway up the side here, there's my little kind of starting dot. And it's going to be coming down like that. So that is another very kind of initially useful owly line. This is so cool. Let's just do this one more time. Here's sort of a medium-sized head, right? Not quite great gray owly, but here on this barred owl, let's look at this angle here, head spacer, this shape here. What would that feel like? Now that we've put in a few initial owl shapes, let's start to look at a higher level of how do you then take this drawing to the next stage. But I do want to just, before I do want to point out that this initial stage, it's fast, but it's really important. And the reason is that if my proportions and the angles just don't really fit on fit the bird that I'm looking at, no matter how many details I then pour in on top of that, it's not going to feel like that bird. Remember, Roger Tory Peterson's field guides have those silhouettes on the inside cover. You can tell the birds by those silhouettes. The owls themselves have distinctive silhouettes. We often tend to get tunnel vision on what the field marks are or the patterns on the plumage, but those silhouettes really are the keys to the kingdom. So what I want to do here is now just, I'm going to take a look at this owl at a kind of higher level of resolution. Let's take a look at, I'm going to think of it in several sections. I'm going to have the head section here, which is going to be a ball. My body section as a little oval down here. And I'm going to think of it that as an oval with a little bit of a zipper up the front of it. All right. The little kind of, there's a central line coming up the middle of the body. But also there's this kind of cone of neck that is going to attach the head to that body. Remember that S-shaped neck inside the owl? This head can come up or down. And the connector is, there's a little tiny scrawny neck inside there, but it's totally filled in with fluff. And so you can actually think of this cone of connecting featherness as being, well, let's see if I can actually make that larger. No, I can't. I want to think of this cone of connecting featherness as its own also little shape here. So on this one, I may start with, I've got a line that kind of comes down, and then I'm going to have my head ball, and I'm going to have my body. But to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to connect the head to the body with a little, so we're thinking of this as this little lampshade. Curve here, curving across here. I'm going to connect this in, and this lampshade can get squished down. Sometimes it even pooches out when you do that. And I'm also going to then think of kind of a centered zipper line on the breast of the bird. Look at that. There's my head. There's my body ball. But look now at that kind of cone connection between the head and the body. So if I'm looking for that, this whole area up here sort of acts and moves as its own kind of independent zone from the body here. So when it's spinning its head around, it is moving across the axis of this little sort of throat zone, that puffy lampshade. So here I'm going to pat the back of this one. There's a ball of a head. There's a body that comes down from that. But now I want to also think of, again, this collar. That's going to help me get that blocked in. I think I want this to push out even more. It's a little lampshade. Here, the head is lowered, but you can still see that little zone. By the way, when you're taking a class like this, one of the things that helps the most is to have your own piece of paper in front of you and to be sketching and drawing along with this. So I really recommend to you that if you don't have one now, you go grab one. Don't worry, you're not behind. You're going to be making a bunch of these little owl doodles. And what you're going to find is that they're going to get more nuanced and sophisticated as this little workshop goes on. And so if you're kind of popping in owl doodles from the start, it's going to be a lot easier for you. So there's one side of my owl. It has a little owlie head, a big owlie head. All right. And then there's another side there that comes down. This owl has a central line here. And got this asymmetrical collar right up there. If you find that your owls are too skinny, something that really helps with that is the size of that head. You make your head bigger, that pushes the back side away from the front side. right? We're going to do just 2 more of these. I'm going to ask everybody make a kind of a sort of a quick gesture sketch of this owl. So there's the, you can start with 1 line on either side, head spacer, ball of the body, and then on that sort of block in where you are seeing that neck collar.
Jack, we have a question coming in from
Yes.
Cynthia, and it's, do you include the collar on the circle for the head when you're blocking?
As I'm blocking this in, do I, please repeat the question.
Do you include the collar, like the neck collar on the circle for the head?
Oh, so I think of my head, and I think of the head as sort of fitting into the top of the lampshade. So I think of myself as having a head here that then attaches to this little collar that comes down. So if here's my owl head. The collar is below that. So I think of head and then body, and then there's going to be this collar that is going to connect those.
And one more bit of feedback we're getting is that when you're turned away, it is a little harder to hear you because you're speaking away from the microphone. So
thank you. Let me test this. Can you hear me clearly now?
yes.
Okay, so I've just switched microphones. So now when I'm drawing, we'll be hearing this. I'll just have to remember that when I'm back over near the other computer, that the other screen, that I'm not going to be able to, I need to speak up. So just kind of look around at these owls, you can sort of see this same thing, and you kind of see how you're kind of picking up on this sort of larger structure, right? Here, there's that little head, there's your little collar, there's your body. Let's just do this one last one, and then we're going to get into another little layer of detail on this. So pet the bird. After drawing those great gray owls, you have to force yourself to put in a smaller head. So you notice that these initial drawings, they're scratchy, they're loose. You're not starting with drawing the eye. You're not focused on just little bits of detail. We're now going to change the way we think about, I've been kind of drawing in some of these little ovals like this. I'm going to change the way I think about those ovals, because what I want to do is when I have shapes on my page, I want my brain to be thinking about those as three-dimensional shapes. Oops, there's one more. Oh, look at these. Look at those collars. All right, can you see that ball of the head, that body? Oh yeah, these are just so neat, just hooting over here. Look at that big collar. So these are kind of big picture owl characteristics that are going to make your owl feel owly.
Hey, Jack. People are having trouble seeing the bottom of the page when you were drawing the legs.
Oh. Of this page?
Yeah,
So can you see where my fingers are right now?
I can.
Okay, so I'll just have to keep it. If I start kind of drawing over here and saying like, okay, and I got this little line, please do call me out and say, let me know, Jack, move your page. All right. Now let's start to think of these things as three-dimensional forms. The cylinder tilted is a very useful way of thinking about this. If you have lines that go all the way around a column, the one that is right at your eye level, you will see as a horizontal line. The more you look up, the more curved they get. The more you look down, the more curved they get. So if you're looking at something that is just generally tilted towards you, you're going to be seeing lines curving in one direction, and generally tilted the other way, you're going to see lines curving the other direction. So take on your piece of paper, let's just do kind of a quick cylinder doodle. In the center, you're going to have a straight line. At the top is a curve. At the bottom is a curve. And between that straight line and there is a curve that's just a little bit less. And if I'm looking at something that is tilted towards me, I'm going to draw a little ellipse, so an oval. And here is the sides of my object coming down. There's going to be a curve at the bottom. Lines, see this curve here? We're going to just follow that. These are going to make similar curves around this. And if I'm looking at an object that is tilted the other way, I'm going to see these lines that I'm drawing are curving the other way. So these lines here are smiles, and these lines here are frowns. And drawing some of those, what we call contour lines, across the shape is going to help you think of them three-dimensionally. We're now going to do this on our owls. So if here I'm looking up at this owl, here I'm looking sort of down on the body of this owl because it's tilted towards me. So I'm going to start with my buddy on the left here. I'm going to pet the bird. Here's one side of the bird. There's a head. And it's coming out, down. And then there's going to be a here. It's got a center line here. And it's got a little neck zone in there. But I'm now going to wrap some of these just contour lines around this body that's tilted towards me. See how I'm curving these lines? What that's doing is suggesting that this part of the body is an ellipse that is tilted
towards me. We're doing this at this stage because this is just as we're drawing, this will help our brain continue to think of these as sort of rounded forms. Later on in the subsequent class, when we're getting into adding all the little plumage details, we're going to be wrapping our plumage around these lines. For that little great gray that's next to it, we're looking up at this thing. And so I'm wanting to think of these lines as I'm looking up, as if I am looking up at an object oriented like that. So even though I'm not seeing those lines kind of going in those directions on this, by doing that, it's just going to help me keep track of this as keep track of the roundness of this. So I'm drawing a volume, not just the shape. And we'll be doing similar things with the head in just a moment. So two more. All right, this is tilted. We're looking up at this and tilted, and it's tilted away from me. Here I'm looking sort of straight up into this owl here. So for the one on the left, that's a hawk owl. Let's kind of come down the back side of its body there. Northern hawk owl. These are diurnal raptors. Really, really neat birds. And what's going on with your, I'm not really seeing much of your little kind of necky zone there. But if I think of this bird as a cylinder, well, not a cylinder, but kind of a little rounded shape like this, my lines are just follow those lines of the feathers across here. And then what do? They're doing this. You're wrapping around that shape. And that long-eared owl next to it. We're looking up at that. These cross contour lines, so these are called cross contour lines. These are going to help us continue to sort of manage in our heads the volume of what you've got. And it also looks kind of cool. Sometimes you get these and you're kind of like, oh, I can feel this. I can feel the chunkiness of this animal. Now, let's add in the head of the bird. How do I look at the head of a bird in a way that is going to help me be able to kind of navigate these shapes? I got some strategies for this body. Let's do the same for the head. from the front here, I've got this, so there's, I can sort of imagine my circle. Think what orientation lines would be particularly helpful to you in drawing these. Draw what you would choose on your piece of paper. And I'll show you how I would handle it. Here's this owl. It's looking towards me. I draw crosshairs through the front of its face. So one line coming down straight through the middle, right through the middle of the beak. You can actually see that little dark line coming down the middle of its face. And then I cross that with with a line where its eyes are. Now take a look, are the eyes in the middle of that? Close, maybe a little slightly closer to the bottom than the top. So I'm going to put crosshairs through the face of my owl. On this one that is looking to the left, here is my head. I want to think of crosshairs going through that. Now, if it's got a very rounded head, my crosshairs are going to follow that roundness. But if many of these owls, we're going to be looking at, there's a number of them that have this, they kind of look as if they flew into a wall. They've got this flat face, so that their head is flat on one side and round on the other. In those, you can get away with just sort of just a straight up cross where the front of that face is coming in. So for this bird's face, if it's kind of, here's its face zone. I'm going to make this bird kind of looking down a little bit. These orientation lines of the cross through the face of the owl are going to be universally really, really useful. Because getting this sort of the symmetry on this face is going to be key. And it's going to help us kind of keep our eyes in line. Right. So let's map this out. We've got a head, and I'm going to put a line right down through the middle of it. Here is a line right through the eyes. So the eyes are often a little bit closer together than you think they should be. Sometimes, very often you'll see them, you want to look at, if you use the eye itself as your unit of measurement, how many eyes are there between the eyes? So here it's slightly wider than one eye. So if I go slightly wider than one eye, and I make an eye over here and an eye over here, I'm now slightly wider than one eye. Where does the beak come in? It's not up here in the middle. The beak I'm seeing as below that line. If I'm looking at it from the side, let's do the same thing. So let's first pat the bird. Put in a ball for its head. here on the side, here's my eye line. And I also might sort of think of sort of where is the edge of that facial disc. That little kind of rough around the face is called the facial disc. But if my owl turns the other way, here a 3/4 view, this is where things really start to get interesting. So let me start with pat my owl, put in a ball for the head, and my eyes are kind of cutting across at this level, but my center line is not in the middle, it is closer to the right-hand side. So that means this space over here, this side is going to be shorter and smaller than the space that I'm going to be seeing on this side. Let's do one more of those. So not a full turn to the side. Start with the negative shape, head of the bird. Eyes are going to be coming across at this level. And where are you going to put that center line? By the way, the folks in the behind the scenes are also collecting, they are collecting questions, and some questions, it's appropriate just to sort of drop those in with me as we are rolling along, and our moderators will be doing that. Other questions we're going to be leaving towards the end. So I want to encourage you to write questions as they come to you.
And just a quick time check, we have about 35 minutes left.
Excellent. So now let's go do a deep dive into the face. I'm going to divide owl heads into 2 categories. These are not taxonomic groups. These are just from gross morphological appearances, 2 kind of different sorts of symmetries that I see in the owl's face, right? And these ones I am going to call the I face, as in the letter I, right? And I call that because if here is the owl's face, there's going to be a big letter I in the middle of the owl's face. And so notice here on the great gray and the barred and the barn, we have, there's a very kind of clear suture that goes far up on the head. A little bit of a widow's peak at the top, giving you this kind of cute heart face here, right? But I call this the I shape, as in the letter I. So let's just play with one of these for a moment. You can pick whichever one you want to play with. I'm going to mess with this barn owl on the right. And its head is slightly turned, so I'm going to give this, well, I made mine more turned than it, but that's okay. And at right angles to that, here's my eye line. So this one's eyes, it's about 2 eye lengths between those, maybe not quite 2 eye lengths. So my eyes are going to be fairly wide spaced on this. Using that, the eye as your spacer really, really helps. My beak is way down here. You can actually see the little nostrils on that. And then on this one here, from the corner of the eye and the corner of the eye, I'm coming down and then into the beak. But there's this very kind of clear dividing line right up at the top here. And I'm just going to heart that out. Such cool looking owls. I want to make this a little bit fancier. I'm going to put in a little bit of shading in here. And look at this. If you just draw a little circle around where you want a highlight to be on the eye, you can then make these dark eyes that feel wet. See how I did that? I had my eye. I said, here's my highlight. Just going to drop in the rest of this. There's my little barn owl. Now, interesting thing about that sort of barn owl face shape is that the feathers around the edge here can be moved. They're under muscular control. So this same owl, the one that's in front here, look at this kind of narrow heart effect. Same owl, now trying to impress you and being all puffed out, right? Isn't that interesting? So when you're looking at the shape of that owl face, you're seeing something about the attitude and the degree of agitation or how relaxed that owl is. This one here, very chill. This one here, a little bit irritated at having its photograph taken without its having signed the consent form. Great gray. Let's block in that face together. Right? Again, this is an eye face. All right. So we've got a side of a head. I've got a side of a head. Look at how close together those eyes are. Isn't it tempting to put them further out? That center line down the middle of the face. And there's a little bit of a widow's peak. That big dish. We're going to go around the side. We're going to go around the side. And then on the bottom, there's a little triangle that's going to come up in there. Lock in what you feel are your kind of critical lines on that. On many owls, you're going to see arching over the eye in this zone here, an area of lighter colored feathers. And those then turn into a pad of bristly feathers that come down below. And on the next group of birds, this pattern is going to be even more pronounced. Just notice that we're seeing that here on this great gray. Time check, how many minutes?
About 25.
Excellent. And that leads us to our second group of birds. And I call these the X face. So we had the I face, these are the X face. So we're not seeing the two sides of this facial disc come up and smash in the middle. We're actually seeing a wedge of forehead come down. Let's just kind of back up one. Remember here, you're seeing a little bit of this widow's peak, but imagine this widow's peak really coming down now and making a prominent pattern across the forehead. In addition to that, this little area of sort of whiskering, the little bristles above the beak are going to make a really prominent X pattern across the face. So we're seeing X in here, we're seeing X in here, right? This with the big kind of very prominent forehead zone is the other kind of group of owls. Again, this is not a formal taxonomic group. This is just sort of a pattern that you're going to see on a lot of on some of the owls. So here, very broad, extremely broad, and not quite as broad, right? So this one has it's skinnier. You can maybe think of this short-eared owl as kind of a link between sort of what we're seeing here. You can make an argument for putting this one in I face, but for me, it's still a little bit more of an X. Let's look at drawing the face of one of these X owls. Here's some more. So long ear here. So you've got this narrow V, this deep widow's peak, right? This eagle owl here, deep widow's peak. And short ear owl again. Oh, it's the same one. Hello. Let's draw an X-face bird. All right, so here we have this very deep, prominent widow's peak. Notice that there are these sort of whiskery bristles that come down on the top of the bill and give you the other part of the X, right? So I'm going to start with the left-hand side of this bird's head. Then I'm going to put in a spacer for its head. And then I'm going to come down on the other side. This one is looking right at me. So I've got a cross, and my eyes are fairly high in that. It's about almost exactly one eye length between those eyes. So I've got pretty big eyes. We're going to sculpt these eyes a little bit. Instead of just a round thing, that eye on the left, it's going to come down, giving it this angry bird's look. Big curve on the outside, and then we're going to come up to that. And that's going to really give you this angry bird's look. These owls can kind of scowl at you. Notice there's a little bit of a extra dark accent right in there. Oh, just come in. The pupil is not down here in the middle of the eye. Look at the amount of space towards the top and the bottom. Our pupil is up here. Pupils on owls can be different sizes. Very often you'll see the one that is in the sun be smaller. These ones look fairly similar to each other. So I'm going to put these angry eyes in here. Pupils more towards the top. Where's my beak? Well, my beak is starting lower. It's on that center line, but I've got this cool deep widow's peak that is going to come across the face like that. The ear, and then on the inside, I'm going to continue that X pattern. So on the lower side, where you have these bristles. And I can make them kind of look a little bit bristly by just taking a few little flicks of my pencil in there. And then those will feel much more bristly. The facial disc on this raptor is fairly small. This owl actually does a lot of hunting during the daytime and uses vision to really help it with a lot of its hunting. I have a little bit of my chin feathers tucked up underneath that. And that gives me the face of this burrowing owl, but it's got the X. Let's take a look at a different one, also with a prominent widow's peak, right? So we've got this X coming in here. I'm gonna go for a fresh page. All right, I've got my head of my bird here, a nice big broad head. And this side coming down straighter. Maybe we want more of a bump out here. This one's looking right at me. And the eyes are about at that level. What is the spacing between them? Oh, they're small eyes and they are about a little bit more than an eye length apart, and they're close together there. So I'm going to have one eye in here, making it flatter on top. So I like to do it, this side is going to curve down and then you can kind of come up in there. The pupils are tucked right up against the top of this. It kind of gives you this sense that it is looking up at you. Really deep widow's peak. And then my facial disc is going to come to there. This is where all my bristles are at the bottom of my X. But I've still got this pattern in there. As you kind of sculpt the head of this, don't over round the head of this bird. Keep it like on the top here, there's kind of a corner here. There's sort of an angularity to this head.
There are about 15 minutes left in the class, and I'd like to just make a quick announcement to everyone who's enjoying this class and hasn't registered for part 2. There is a part 2 coming next week, and I have dropped the link in the chat to register. So if you're enjoying this, please register for part 2.
We're going to do, oh, I should have meant to zoom in on this earlier. That's just so cool. Look at those little bristles by the nose. Again, the source of these photographs is from seeingbirds.com and birdpixel.com. Ashok Khosla and Vivek Kanzode are the photographers who really wonderfully make their work accessible to folks like us who want to use them to get our bird drawing on. We're going to do this one last bird face here. All right, again, it's an X face. Yeah, we'll do that. This bird face, again, you kind of can see the X. We've got the coming down here, we've got this edge of the widow's peak coming down here, giving you that upper part of the X. That then continues out in this little, the bristles around the beak kind of continue out this way, gives you this sort of full X effect across the face. So if I were to draw this one, back up just a little bit. I have the back of my head and the back of the bird. It has a broad head and it's going to come down fairly straight here, tuck in a little bit, and a nice kind of flat on the top. It's looking this way, and so now I'm going to place my eyes. So my eye is going to be in here. Might need a little bit more head if I'm going to have room for that eye. So for that eye, I'm going to make curved line on top and then arc around the bottom and then up. My pupil goes towards the top of that eye. Over on the other side, I'm going up, Angry Bird style, over, just like this one curved down, this one curves down. And my pupil is there. These sort of I'm sleepy lines. There is a really broad widow's peak that comes up along the front edge of this. And you're seeing the top of the nostrils in there, in that beak. Put a little shadow on one side of that beak if you want to give it a little bit of dimension. And then what are these bristles doing here? We've got these bristles, they're kind of coming in a wedge like this.
We have about 10 minutes left. Do you think there will be time for some questions?
Yeah, I'll be done with this one in just a second. And then I'd love to open it up for questions. So this little bit in here, you see the little pail that is up there? That is going to help kind of round out that eye. The edge of the ear patch here, not the ear patch, but the facial disc, it's got this lovely dark edge to it. And on this side, I'm going to put that closer to the eye than on the other side because it's got its head just turned just ever so slightly. This is a horned owl. And so the horns are coming sort of in line with the widow's peak. There's a series of feathers, so little ones that give way to bigger ones in this zone here. We can get in more into kind of how we can add textures and other markings on these birds. That's going to be in the next class. But this allows me to kind of block in the head of my bird here. Oh, this just because it's so much fun. I think I do want to do one more thing. Sorry about that, Amar. Here we go. I'm going to just drop in some white because I've got this toned paper. It's always fun when you've got toned paper. Where can you get a chance to play with it just a little bit? And there we go. So what I'm ready for some questions.
Sorry, I was on mute. We have a couple of questions asking about any advice for the shape of the beaks. Teresa Johnson was suggesting maybe an ice cream cone.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So let me. So stepping off camera for a second. No, I've got a resource I can't really find there. Rather than a straight up ice cream cone where it's too kind of clearly done, what I might think of as a generic hold on a moment. I'm going to change myself back to you can sometimes think of it as, let me zoom down on this. Maybe we can spotlight this to make it larger. Could we perhaps spotlight my, there we go. So I'm going to make it a lopsided diamond. And the nostrils may be right in here in this part. And you may, this edge may be also kind of sort of kind of the edge of where those bristles are coming in, so kind of hidden up into those bristles. But so you can get this. You'll sometimes in other owls it'll be more flat across the top, but sometimes you'll get a little bit more of a peak up there as well. So you can have it flat topped, or sometimes it's kind of disappearing into those bristles.
Okay. Next question is from Jan Arndt, and it's when we change the position of the head looking off to one side, do you still apply the lampshade theory while drawing?
I get this crooked lampshade. So if here's my owl, and it's looking over in this direction. I'm going to get there still will be this kind of cone of attachment that's going to smooth your head into your body.
Okay, I think that's about all the time we have for questions. Like always, I'd like to encourage everyone who took the class to share their work using our hashtag Nature Journal Audubon. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat again in a second. But kind of to go along with that, Jack, is there any homework assignment for everyone in the class?
Oh, absolutely, there is. So just a couple of homework assignment and sort of general announcement. So if this was fun, remember, there's part 2 of this class. You can sign up for that and get part 2. In addition to that, I teach 3 classes on nature journaling that are free online Zoom workshops every week. And if you go to my website, which is johnmuirlaws.com, you can find it there. And there's a calendar, and you just can go whoop, and you're in the Zoom meeting. So no pre-registration is required. Just show up there. The times are posted, and topics are posted there. In addition to that, there is a I completely just lost my train of thought. Woo, woo. But so if this was fun, you can get more in those ways. Also your homework. These ideas of how to draw owls are right now going to be right at your fingertips and kind of on the tip of your brain. If you don't do something to really kind of use these, soon, your brain will do the select all delete function, and your new owl drawing tricks will be disappearing into the void. So what you want to do is there's two parts of the homework. Part one is that I would like you to fill up, like just go to birdpixel.com or seeingbirds.com or your favorite owl resource site, and just fill up a few pages, a couple of pages with a bunch of little unfinished sketches of these owls, where you're just sort of like balking in the posture and maybe the crosshairs for the head. And just kind of get that kind of blocking in the owl thing. You do not have to finish these, but what you want to do is intentionally look at a bunch of birds in a bunch of different positions. And so doing quick things on all of those is going to be great. The second part of it is to take one of these drawings and to work that out into a little bit more of a detailed drawing showing the structure of the owl's face and really kind of get into that owl's face. I think that the 3/4 view ones are the most challenging ones. And when I meet with, but they also can really look the most interesting. So consider that a challenge. And I hope you'd enjoy playing with that. Take a really close look at the pupils of the eyes, because in those 3/4 views, there is a very strange thing that goes on. And I didn't mention it in this class. We're going to talk about it in the subsequent class. But see if you can, by looking at the pupils of the eyes, especially the eye on the far side, it will be doing something unexpected and fun. And I hope that the strategies from today are going to really enrich your birding and your bird sketching and drawing. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jack. And thank you so much to everyone in attendance. So right before we close, the last thing I would like to request is if you are able and you enjoyed this class, please donate to Jack or purchase some art supplies from his website. And after you've supported Jack, if you still have some more ability to support, then we'd love for you to support the Richardson Bay Audubon Center and Sanctuary. Additionally, please register for part 2. It's going to be great. We'll be diving into a lot more detail. And we really look forward to seeing your artwork on #NatureJournalAudubon.
So say that hashtag again.
#NatureJournalAudubon.
All right. And so I also would like to encourage people to go to the Richardson Bay Audubon site and make a donation to them for all their wonderful education work that they do, like this program that they're bringing to you. Richardson Bay Audubon rocks. You can also support your own local chapter of the Audubon Society. But our donations make a huge difference for what they are able to do in terms of conservation and education. Hey, Mar. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you and the Audubon Society for making this workshop possible.
Thank you so much, Jack. Hopefully we'll see everyone here next week. Bye.
I'll look forward to it.